שלום לכולם. אנחנו עוברים עכשיו להרצאה קצת we're moving on to a more provocative lecture by, I think, the first student. True? You didn't retire.
I was flattered this morning by Tom Dan, who mentioned Ya'ir and Clyne 73. I am the Clyne from the 73, but I betrayed this topic. I'm not dealing with the last 25 years. I'm not in the field of geomorphology. I am more in the field of coastal geomorphology. And being a coastal geomorphologist, I came across the question of sea level rise, yes or no. And I'm not coming to attack the problem from the point of view of a climatologist. So you want here CO2 and greenhouse, and I'm not coming from the point of view of deep ocean oceanography. And therefore, there won't be hot current or cold current. I was just involved in many studies which were looking on changes in the Israeli coast along the last 100 years. And before I start my presentation, I go into our Jewish sources, because we have to deal with cycles, and we understand whether or not we have cycles in nature. And the Babylonian Talmud tells us that when the first Adam was born or created, never mind what was the process, that was around the 21st day of September. And Adam Rishon did his sin, and since then he realized that the day is getting shorter and shorter. But luckily enough, the moon also changed its shape. And he said, well, maybe there is a cycle in nature. And he was right. After a month, the moon was reborn. And he waited another month, and yes, there is a cycle in the moon. But the days are getting shorter and shorter, and he said, well, that's because of me. That's my sin, and the world is going to collapse because of that. Luckily enough, 31st of December arrived, and suddenly the day increases. And here, there is another cycle on top of the first one. And why I am telling that? Because in 1972, the year that I finished my master's with Aaron, a very important geologist, I met him later by the name of Kukla. He was a Czech by origin, but he lived in the United States. And he and his fellow mate Matthews, they wrote a letter to the President of the United States, that was Nixon at the time, saying that we are going toward an ice age, and that was in the time of the Cold War. Beware, the Russians already into research. And they didn't send the letter only to the President, they published it in a paper, 1972, we are approaching the end of the interglacial. That was the idea in the science at those days, and Nature published a paper that there is a consensus over all the scientists that the world is going toward an ice age. Nowadays, when I am living my academic life, the idea changed completely. And I'm asking a small question. There is an accumulation of 6,000 years of information, and we are still doing conclusion the same way that primitive Adam did his conclusion. Just think about that. And the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, which is one of the leading institutes in the world, they also changed their mind within the last 25 years. In 1990, they wrote, no evidence for sea level rise. 10 years later, yes, there are evidence, sorry, but that is in less than a millimeter a year. And nowadays they are claiming at least 3.2 millimeters a year. So within short span of time, they are changing their idea. And then obviously there is the moon picture. Are we going crazy? That is a map published by the United Nations in 2005, claiming that by the year 2010, we will have 50 million climate refugees. Where from? From Delta's area, those are all the black points, then lowland sea level area, and then desert and permafrost. But what happened? 2010 passed, and there was no 50 million. So they repeat the claim, and the claim say in 2011, the 50,000 are still on the news, but it will be by 2020. We are now in 2017. I can't see the number of the climate refugees. And we have to remember, at the time we said that Kukla wrote that the same way of frightening the people was in the world. And you see just that small samples of many, many papers, they are all claiming that we are going toward an ice age. Some numbers, because most of you are not dealing with ocean processes. If we change the pressure over the ocean, a deep ocean, 4 kilometers, by 1 hectopascal, which is fair enough, 1 millibar, we change the surface by 1 centimeter, just because of the pressure. So the sea level is breathing all the time because that's nothing. And then that's the other one, to change all the column of water by 1 degree, because we have the thermocline and so on, that's more theoretically. But if we change a 4 kilometer depth of ocean by 1 degree Celsius, the ocean will breathe by 60 centimeters. Opposite way will be in the case of more salt in the water. I won't go into it. And the last factor that I want to tell you is that if we melt all the ice in the world, meaning Greenland and Antarctica, the sea level will rise by about 70 meters. And if there is any climatologist here and tell me, well, I read 80 meters, I won't argue with it. I buy 80 meters as well. And those are actual values that you have to take into your research. For example, we wrote a paper on the Mediterranean Sea, and we took the 4 longest record stations in the Mediterranean Sea, Trieste, Venezia, Genova, and Marseille, and we see that during the years 61, 62, and 85, 86, sea level wasn't changing much. You see a straight line here in all the stations. And then we went into the climate people, and we realized that during that period, the average pressure on the mainly eastern part of the Mediterranean was higher, and therefore the water level was lower. And if I'm going to the big place, Antarctica is melting, and every one of us sees the TV and it sees the breakdown of Antarctica. But what can I do? 18 months ago, NASA published their own research and claiming that Antarctica is gaining ice, 82 gigaton a year. That's by NASA, not by Micha Kline. Yes, that is the area where you have breakdown from Antarctica. And it's very nice to take a photograph there, because it's nice to take a photograph here and to say, well, the height of the ice is 3 centimeters more. It doesn't make any impression, but those are data by NASA. And the other one, there is a scientist from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, in the physics department, by the name of Yair. He is claiming that argument for the last 15, 20 years, that sea level is basically connected to sunspot. So I didn't went into it because that's his field. But I just took the 400 years, the last 400 years of sunspot activity, and we started counting them in 70-50. And each cycle is 11 years, so we are now in the cycle 24 or 25. And you see that over the time you have the 11-year cycles, but you also have on top of the cycle another one, which created cold area. And here are the 20 years that Kukla felt, and that's the reason he wrote the letter. But he also didn't realize that this may end. And now that's a nice one, because that's exactly the same graph, but it tries to predict the coming 30, 40 years. And in the year, on 5 to May 2045, I will be exactly 100. And there will be an argument in the street that the climate dropped by 0.6 degrees. And all the activists who want to burn the fuel say, well, we are lucky that you burn the fuel, because otherwise it would have been down by 0.9 degrees. And that is the way we are acting in science. And then I went into a new problem which I never came across before. And I think that 80% of the people who deal with geology never thought about it. Because on the globe we have 3 different surfaces. One is a topography surface, which we all know because that is familiar to us. The other one, which is mainly familiar to the geodesists, and that's the geoid surface, which is not smooth but has some sinuosity. And the third one is the ellipsoid. And what is the ellipsoid? All the time that we measure height from ground, we put the million and so on. But the minute we went out to space, and we are measuring height back to surface, so what are we measuring? Here is the satellite launching some 100 kilometers above the surface. If the 100 kilometers is to the high point here, or the 100 kilometers is to the low point here. And there is a difference. And obviously we get many funny results because we are not familiar with it. The biggest company in the world to produce data on GPS, RSA, they are located in California. And they checked the map of the headwater, and it was 400 meters above sea level. And then they repeated all from satellite measurement, and it was 32 meters lower. And obviously that's a very well-known one, that the globe itself is dynamic, and it changes every year by the same amount that we are claiming that sea level is rising. And therefore you see, and I brought this out of many arguments like that, because here you see this pink area, pink color here. We all know that the eastern side of the United States is many, many floods are coming on the surface. But what can we do? That is the area which is subsidizing by 10 millimeters a year. So maybe all the flooding is not because sea level rise, it's because of subsidence of the area. That's the only one graph that I wrote concerning temperature, because I decided temperature is not the topic today. Global warming is the business of different people, and that's just to show you how sensitive are the data of changing temperature. The right graph is the same area, two very distant companies in the United States. One is NOAA and the other one is the Met Office of the United States. And they are referring to the same period, and all the data of NOAA is higher than the data of the Met Office. And the other one, when you measure temperature on the surface or by satellite, here is the same period, one by NASA taking measurements on landscape, and the other one is satellite data. And the satellite data show us no increase in temperature over that period. So when you read a paper, did you ever want to see whether or not it's satellite measurement or surface measurement? And that is the prediction versus observation. That's what the IPCC reckoned after taking 1900 to 2000 as the calibration period, and that should have been the rise in temperature, and that's what we actually measured, and that's the same idea from a different source, and that's one of my gurus on this topic, Murner, and he is one of the very, very strong fighters against the climatic warming problem, and he did the same trick there. And now I'm going to the source of data for the rising mean sea level. And there are three sources of data. One is the Permanent Service for Mean Sea Level, which is an institute located in Britannia, and has all the data from time ages all over the world. And the other one is obviously satellite data, and the third one is which geomorphologists we like them the best, and that is field evidence. And this guy wrote a paper of an old picture in Tasmania showing the mark of sea level in 1841. And he went back after 158 years, and the mark was exactly the same. You see the line with the arrow, the line with the arrow. So field evidence shows us no sea level rise. But to be honest, if I take the Israeli coast, and that's the well indoor, and you see that in 1915, a German visitor in Palestine, said, well, I saw people taking water out of that, and nowadays, obviously, no way. So there is a rise of 20, 30 centimeters for sure. And that is one of the worst graphs I ever saw in my life. Because, first of all, anyone who read the graph say, well, we have an increase in water level of nearly 3 millimeters a year. Good. But the first point, if you take the same company a few months later, and you suddenly realize that they increase the value by 15%. Why is that so? Because here it's with no correction, and here it's with correction. And I won't go in now because I short time what is the correction. But the more important thing about this graph is that all the 7 satellites they are using, they give the same result. When my first year tutor in physics lab got the same result from the group, he gave 0 to all the groups because they were quoting each other. And you can't believe that all the different satellites will give the same result. And therefore, I went in and checked them. Those are the 3 first ones, topic JSON1 and JSON2. The actual data of them wasn't, they were not matching. The data was, the trend was okay, but the data was different. So they smoothed the data and came out with this graph. And then the European sent another satellite, which called NBSat. And the data of the NBSat, once again, didn't fit the findings of the first one. So what they did, they corrected the data and came out with this graph. And we all live happy ever after, because in a minute. No. In a minute. Okay. And they launch another one. And that is Grace. And once again, the data from Grace are here, and they corrected the data, and that's it. So I don't know if one can believe in the data of and then I come to the third and the last source of data, and that's the permanent survey from MITS 11. And those are the project of loss station all over the world. But here, once again, I face a problem. That's because all the old stations are all located on Europe and on America, which are by definition increasing in height because of the rebound. And therefore, if I take the permanent service for me, an average height, it's that sum. But here is a problem, because if you take station by station, you see very different patterns in different stations. And Tom, we speak English because of your honor, so remember, there is 1 meter increase in Bangkok. You remember that? Because if I go and I jump, you see I jumped it all, I came to this table, which is just measuring subsidies of urban area along the coast. And I go back to Bangkok. That's the reason I asked Tom to remember the 1 meter. And what is the subsidence rate in Bangkok? 1 meter. So what's going on in Bangkok? I don't know. Yes, number of floods increase. That's definitely true. But the number of floods may increase either because of sea level rise or because of land subsidence. And obviously, land subsidence is order of magnitude more than, and that's the last one for Tom again. That is the place with the highest subsidence in the United States. And I don't know this guy, but I believe in my science. So from 1925 to 1977, 50 years time span, there is at least 10 meter subsidence of the land. And if that's happened in the coast area, obviously we are in a problem. Those are the conclusions I went over them. I just mentioned these 2 guys, Australian. Fantastic work they did. They took all the radio stations of the world and they came out with a very important conclusion. The satellite altimetry is just unrealistic for the measurement of sea level change. Yeah, it's useless for that. And that's enough. Thank you very much.